Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, a little unusual for us.
Right. Usually we take a topic, a concept, a historical event, maybe a scientific breakthrough, and we tear it apart to see how it works. We look at the mechanics. But today we are going on a walk.
A walk.
A walk, but not just any walk. I want you to imagine a street that functions like a time machine.
Oh, I like that description.
Because you step onto the asphalt,
Yeah.
and suddenly the laws of physics, or at least the laws of chronology, they just start to bend. We aren't talking about a movie set here, and we aren't talking about a museum where everything is neatly behind glass.
No, definitely not.
We are talking about a very real, very tangible place, Filiki Etaireia Street in Thessaloniki, Greece.
It's such a fascinating choice for a deep dive. You know, when people think of Thessaloniki, if they've visited or read about it, they usually think of the big arteries.
The tourist hubs.
Exactly. They think of Simiski with all its shops, the high street fashion, the noise, or they think of Ignatia with its heavy traffic and those massive layers of visible history right there on the surface. But Filiki Etaireia is different.
It really is. It's quieter. It has a completely different rhythm. It feels almost residential in some parts and then almost bohemian in others.
Yeah, it has a very distinctive vibe.
But the premise of our deep dive today, and looking at this stack of sources we have here, the historical archives, the architectural notes, the local chronicles, the premise is that this quietness is entirely deceptive.
Very deceptive.
Because all these sources point to one conclusion. This single street is a cross-section of thousands of years of history.
It really is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, urban planners often talk about this concept of palimpsests.
Palimpsests, right?
Yeah, cities that are written over, erased, and then written over again.
Like the old ancient parchments.
Exactly. Ancient parchments worked exactly the same way. You'd scrape off the ink from an old manuscript and write a new prayer or a new ledger over it. But the old writing was still there, just faint underneath. Filiki Etaireia is the perfect physical example of that.
I love that image. The city as a scraped parchment. Because in a span of just a few hundred meters of walk that would literally take you 5 minutes if you were rushing, you go from ancient Rome to the Byzantine Empire, through the explosive tension of the 1821 revolution, into these secret societies of the 1930s, the darkness of the Nazi occupation, and right up to a modern art house cinema.
It's dense. The history is incredibly dense.
It's the street of secrets. And before we even take our first virtual step on this street, before we look at the buildings or the pavement, we have to talk about the name.
Right, the name itself is the first layer.
Because the street isn't named after a person like a famous general or politician. It's named after a group, the Filiki Etaireia.
Which translates to the Society of Friends.
Which sounds friendly enough, right? Like a book club. Or maybe a neighborhood watch group.
Far from it. That benign name was a deliberate cover. This was the secret organization that essentially engineered the Greek War of Independence.
Ah.
Yeah. And fittingly, our sources suggest that without understanding them, you really can't understand the street, or the modern Greek state, for that matter.
So let's unpack this. The Filiki Etaireia.
Yeah.
Who were they? Because looking through my notes here, it describes a scene that feels like the opening of a spy thriller.
It really does play out like one. It starts on September 14th, 1814, but not in Greece.
Right. We're in Odessa, Russia.
Exactly.
Which is crucial context. Why Odessa?
Yeah.
Why not, Athens or Sparta or somewhere on the Greek mainland?
Well, at the time, Greece was fully under Ottoman rule. Organizing a massive revolution inside the belly of the beast was incredibly dangerous. You'd be crushed immediately.
So they needed a safe haven.
Right. Odessa was this booming port city in the Russian Empire, and it had a thriving Greek merchant community. It was a place where ideas could circulate a bit more freely. It was a hub of the diaspora.
Okay, so you have 3 men gathering in a small house in this Russian port city. Nikolaos Galatis, Emmanuel Xanthos, and Athanasios Sokolov.
And the thing to note here, these weren't generals. They weren't princes.
They weren't diplomats with the ear of the Tsar.
No, and that's what makes it so interesting. They were humble merchants. Skoufas was from Arda, Xanthos from Patmos, and Sokolov from Ioannina. They were essentially middle-class guys.
Just regular businessmen.
Yeah, they dealt in grain and shipping, but they had this audacious, almost impossible idea to liberate Greece from the Ottoman Empire.
I love that so much. 3 guys in a room deciding to topple an empire. It really sounds like the plot of a movie where the underdogs take on the world.
It does.
But they knew they couldn't do it by shouting from the rooftops. They had to go underground.
Deep underground. The operations of the Filiki Filiki Etaireia were incredibly sophisticated for the time. This is early 19th century spycraft.
What kind of spycraft are we talking about?
They used secret codes, pseudonyms, complex symbols. They even had a specific alphabet for their correspondence.
So like a cipher.
Exactly like a cipher. So if a letter was intercepted by Ottoman authorities, it just looked like complete gibberish.
My notes mention the symbols, the eagle, fire, and the motto, which everyone knows today but was a very dangerous whisper back then, freedom or death.
Eleftheria Aithanatus. It wasn't just a catchy slogan, it was a binary choice. You succeed or you die. There is no third option, no compromise.
Tell me about the initiation, because if I wanted to join, or rather if I was recruited, what would that actually look like?
It was designed to be terrifying and absolutely binding. New members had to swear oaths on an icon and the gospel.
So tying in the religious aspect heavily.
Very heavily. It was a binding spiritual contract as much as a political one. You were swearing before God that you would not betray the brotherhood. If you did, the penalty was death.
No pressure.
Right. And the secrecy was paramount. Even today, with all the historical digging, historians still don't know the names of all the members.
It's the ultimate secret society. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Usually, when we think of these 19th century brotherhoods, we think of, well, a brotherhood, a boys' club.
Naturally.
But the sources point out something I hadn't heard before.
Ah, you're thinking of Kyriaki Nafti.
Yes. Kyriaki Nafti from Smyrna.
She was the first known female member, and her inclusion is significant. It shows that while the society was male-dominated, the cause was all-encompassing. It required everyone.
And it wasn't just merchants either, right?
No, they expanded rapidly. They started bringing in clergy, officers of the Russian army, intellectuals, wealthy landowners.
Talk about scaling a startup. They went from 3 guys in a room in 1814 to something massive by 1821.
The growth was exponential. By 1821, they had initiated over 20,000 people.
20,000.
Think about that network. It stretched across the Ottoman Empire, into Europe, and deep into Russia. And remember, no internet, no telephones, no telegraph even.
Just letters, messengers, and whispers. That is a logistical miracle.
It really is. But eventually they hit a wall. A merchant can organize funding and build a network, but can he lead an army in the field?
Probably not. They needed military clout.
Exactly. So in 1820, Alexander Ypsilantis took charge.
Who was he?
He was a major general in the Russian army. He had lost an arm in battle at Dresden. He was a verified war hero. This was the turning point for the society. They moved from planning and recruiting to actual execution.
They weren't just a debating society anymore.
No, they were gathering money, buying guns, and outfitting ships, preparing for war.
And it all culminates in that spark.
February 24th, 1821. Ypsilantis crosses the Pruth River and raises the flag in Iasi in Moldavia. That was the signal.
And then the dominoes fall.
A few weeks later, the revolution erupts in the Peloponnese.
So when we walk down Filiki Etaireia Street today, we were walking down a street named after the architects of the modern country's existence.
Exactly. Without that coordination, without that unified hope provided by the society, the 1821 revolution likely would have been completely fragmented.
Just a bunch of local uprisings?
Right. It would have been a series of isolated riots that the Ottomans could have crushed one by one with overwhelming force. The society gave them a unified nervous system. It gave them the belief that they weren't alone.
Okay, so that sets the stage for the name. Now, let's physically go to the street. We are in Thessaloniki, heading towards the sea, perhaps coming from the bustling Egnatia Street. We turn onto Filikis Etaireia. What is the first thing that hits us?
Well, if you know where to look, the first thing that hits you is that you are walking right through a fortress.
The walls.
The Byzantine walls. Thessaloniki was one of the most fortified cities in the entire Byzantine Empire.
And it had to be, right?
It absolutely had to be. It was the second most important city after Constantinople. It was called the Symbasilousa, the co-reigning city. And along Filikis Etaireia, these walls aren't just ruins neatly cordoned off in a park. They are integrated into the urban fabric.
I'm looking at the notes here. It says parts of the fortification are visible behind the Piraeus Bank.
Yes, literally behind a modern bank. And behind the municipal library, sometimes you can even see parts of them inside the lobbies of residential buildings.
That is wild.
You have the Pertiachismo, which is the outer wall, and the main wall. If you look closely at the masonry, you can see these distinct triangular projections in the architecture.
Triangular projections. What was the purpose of those? Was it just decorative?
Not at all. It was pure military engineering. deflection.
Oh, like for projectiles?
Exactly. If an enemy fired a catapult or tried to use a battering ram against the wall, the triangular angle would deflect the kinetic force. It made them much harder to breach.
So it's high-tech military engineering from 1,000 years ago, sitting right next to an ATM.
It's surreal when you really stop to think about it. You're withdrawing cash to go buy a coffee, and 3 feet away is a wall that defended the city against the Normans or the Saracens.
It's a constant reminder of the city's strategic importance. And these walls are UNESCO monuments, right?
They are. They really define the shape of the upper city. But if we take our eyes off the walls and look down, beneath the pavement.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the research. The hidden giant.
Yes. The street sits directly on top of something massive, the Roman hippodrome of Galerio.
We are talking about a chariot racetrack, right? Like full-on Ben-Hur.
Exactly like Ben-Hur. It was built in the 4th century A.D. by the Emperor Galerius, and the dimensions are just staggering. 450 meters long by 95 meters wide.
450 meters. That is enormous. That's almost 5 football fields laid end to end.
It occupies a huge swath of the modern city center. It runs straight under Filikis Etaireia, under Ioannis Street, under Agapenu Street.
So imagine this for a second. If you're listening to this, put yourself there. You're walking your dog on the pavement. A delivery scooter whizzes by you. But 2,000 years ago, right at that exact geographic coordinate, 4 horses were tearing up the sand, pulling a chariot with thousands of people screaming in the grandstands.
It's incredible. And the Emperor Galerius himself would be watching from the Kathisma,
The Kathisma.
the imperial box, which was located right there, connected directly to his palace complex next door. This wasn't just a sports arena. It was the absolute center of political and social life.
Right, because sports and politics were basically the same thing back then.
Exactly. It wasn't just races. It was where political demonstrations happened, massive spectacles, and yes, public executions. It was where the emperor showed his face to the public.
It really emphasizes how temporary our current reality is. We see the concrete apartment buildings and we think, well, this is the city. This is what's permanent. But the city is actually this deep, vertical stack of realities.
And those realities bleed into each other. Remnants of the hippodrome are still visible in the basements of some of the apartment buildings on the street.
No way.
Yes. If you live in one of those buildings, your storage locker where you keep your winter coats might be literally leaning against a Roman archway.
That is just so dense. Okay, so we have the Byzantine military walls. We have the Roman entertainment complex beneath our feet. Now, as we move down the street, we come to an intersection, the corner of Filikis Etaireia and D. Margheriti, and there's a church there, St. Anthony's.
Yes, a small, fairly discreet church. But this is where the history of our walk takes a much darker, almost Gothic turn.
The sources refer to it as the Sanctuary of Screams, which is honestly quite the nickname for a church.
It is a very heavy name. The building itself has an interesting architectural timeline. It was originally built as a small chapel in the early 18th century, and then the main temple, which is a 2-aisled basilica, was expanded in the late 19th century.
Okay, so a fairly standard evolution for a church in Greece.
Except during the Ottoman era, this wasn't just a place of worship, it served a dual purpose. It was the psychiatric asylum for the Greek Orthodox community of the city.
An asylum in the 18th century. I can't imagine the medical conditions were good.
They were horrific by modern standards, truly nightmare-inducing. But we really have to view it through the lens of the time. Mental illness wasn't understood as a medical condition.
It was seen as a spiritual failing.
Exactly. Or outright demonic possession. So the treatment wasn't therapy or medication or even basic psychological care. It was exorcism.
Wow. So they were bringing patients here to cast demons out of them.
Yes. And the methods were brutal. The sources mention that there were physical hooks embedded in the walls of the church to chain the patients down during these treatments.
Hooks on the walls of the church.
Yes, to restrain them while the priests essentially tried to pray or scare the illness out of them. That's exactly why it earned the nickname the Temple of Screams and Miracles.
It paints such a grim picture. You had the desperation of these families who didn't know what else to do with their loved ones, the absolute suffering of the patients, and the intense prayers of the clergy, all mixed together in this very small, confined space.
It's a very heavy feeling. If you walk inside today, it's a quiet, peaceful place of worship. You see the icons, you smell the incense.
It masks its painful past very well.
It does. But it stands as a testament to how society dealt with the other, with the misunderstood, for centuries. It's definitely a somber stop on our walk.
It really grounds you. So we leave the church, kind of shaking off that chill, and we walk just a little bit further down the street to number 24, and suddenly the architecture just shifts entirely.
Dramatically.
We aren't looking at Roman ruins or Byzantine bricks or an old chapel anymore. We are looking at something incredibly bold, something made of heavy concrete.
The Tectonico Megaro, the Masonic Lodge of Thessaloniki.
This building seems to be the absolute centerpiece of the street's narrative.
It really is the crown jewel of the secrets we're talking about today. It was built between 1932 and 1935. The architects were Georgios Manousos and Simeon Milonis. And they clearly didn't design a building that was meant to blend into the background.
No, my notes say the style is eclectic with Art Nouveau elements.
Mm-hmm.
But more than just the aesthetic, it was built to survive.
It's made of heavy, reinforced concrete. And the design was highly intentional. It was built specifically to withstand aerial bombardments.
In 1935.
Yes. Remember the timing. The mid-1930s in Europe, people were getting uneasy. The drums of war were already beating in the distance.
Okay, so let's talk about what this building actually is. It's a Masonic Lodge. Now, for a secret society, they aren't exactly hiding, are they?
That's the great irony of it. You expect a secret society to be meeting in a hidden basement with a password at the door, but this is a massive prominent structure right on the street.
And if you stand on the pavement and look up, and I really encourage you listening to visualize this, you see the symbols in plain sight.
The compass and the square.
Intertwined, right there on the iron railings of the balconies and over the entrance. It's such a bold statement.
It signals clearly to anyone walking by, we are here. It says this is not a normal apartment block. This is a home for a brotherhood dedicated to building ideals.
Before we get to what happened inside this building during the war, give us a quick origin story. Why build this huge hall in the first place?
Well, you have to go back slightly to the Great Fire of Thessaloniki in 1917, which devastated massive parts of the city. After that fire, the Freemasons founded a savings and credit cooperative called Philip.
To rebuild.
Their goal was to pool their financial resources to build a permanent central home for the city's lodges. And they succeeded. Today, that building houses all 8 Masonic lodges of the city.
Okay, so it's 1935. The building is finished. It's grand. It's heavily symbolic. And it's practically bomb-proof. And then 1941 arrives.
The Nazis enter Thessaloniki.
And this is where the story of this building becomes incredibly dramatic. The Nazis, as we know, aggressively persecuted Freemasons.
They did. They viewed them as dangerous enemies of the Reich. They constantly lumped them in with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, viewing the lodges as part of a global threat.
So what did the occupying forces do to the building?
They requisitioned it immediately, but they didn't just use it as a standard military barracks or a supply depot. They turned the Masonic Lodge into a Nazi court-martial.
That is just a chilling inversion of purpose, a building literally designed around the motto, liberty, equality, fraternity, gets turned into a place of fascist judgment and oppression.
The psychological warfare of that choice wasn't accidental, but it gets even more complex. The Nazis occupied the main upper floors for their court, but in the mezzanine and the basement, the Masons were allowed to keep a few small rooms for storage.
Okay.
And in those very rooms, literally right under the floorboards of the Nazi judges, a brave Mason organized a soup kitchen.
Wait, really? A soup kitchen inside the Nazi-occupied building?
Yes. While the occupiers were upstairs handing down death sentences, the Masons were downstairs secretly feeding the starving population of Thessaloniki.
During the Great Famine of the occupation.
Exactly. It's an incredible, almost unbelievable act of resistance.
And the risk must have been astronomical. If they were caught.
They would have been executed on the spot. The Gestapo had opened files on Masons across the city. Many were arrested, interrogated, and sent to concentration camps.
Did the Nazis damage the building itself?
They looted it heavily. They destroyed the lodge's extensive library, which is a tragedy in itself because there were irreplaceable historical books and manuscripts lost forever, and they mutilated the statues inside.
Specifically the statue of the 3 degrees, right?
Yes, a famous statue representing the apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason. The Nazis systematically smashed the faces of the figures. They also stole all the ceremonial relics and the lodge banners.
But there is a twist to the story of the stolen items. A really strange footnote.
A fascinating one. In 1956, over a decade after the war ended, a mysterious package arrived in the mail at the lodge.
No return address.
No return address, just postmarked from Austria.
And what was inside?
Inside was one of the original stolen banners from the Phoenix Lodge.
That's crazy. So someone had a guilty conscience. Or maybe a descendant found it in their grandfather's attic and mailed it back.
We will likely never know the identity of the sender, but a piece of their history returned home.
So the war ends, the building is battered, but thanks to that reinforced concrete, it survives.
It survives. It was heavily renovated in 1978 following the big earthquake that hit Thessaloniki, and it remains highly active today.
But it's not exactly open to tourists.
No, it is a private society after all. The doors are usually firmly shut to the public, but there was a rare exception in 2019 during the Open House Thessaloniki Architecture Festival.
They actually opened the doors.
They did. For the first time, the public was allowed to walk through.
I bet the lines were just around the block.
They were massive. People waited for hours because everyone in the city wants to see what's inside the forbidden building.
Well, since we can't physically take our listeners inside right now, let's use the sources to paint the picture for them.
Mm-hmm.
What is behind those heavy doors?
It is intensely theatrical. You walk in and you're met with these grand sweeping staircases covered in deep red carpets. Every single architectural detail is highly symbolic.
Like the floors.
Right. The floor isn't just standard decorative tile. It's a striking black and white checkerboard pattern.
Which represents what in their tradition?
It represents human life, the constant duality of good and evil, light and dark, joy and sorrow. It also features a magic square in the design.
A magic square. Like a puzzle.
It's a grid of numbers from 1 to 9, arranged so that every row, every column, and every diagonal perfectly adds up to 15.
That is very Da Vinci Code.
It's very mathematical, very focused on sacred geometry. And then you enter the main hall.
What does that look like?
The ceiling is painted like a vast starry sky, complete with accurate zodiac signs. At the entrance to the temple proper, you have the 2 great pillars, marked J and B.
Jachin and Boaz.
Exactly, mirroring the pillars of King Solomon's temple. And emblazoned on the wall is the motto, liberty, equality, fraternity.
And apparently the acoustics in that main hall are incredible.
Rumored to be among the absolute best in Europe. The room was specifically engineered for ritual, ensuring that the spoken word, even a whisper, carries perfectly to every corner of the room.
It's amazing that this space exists right there at number 24, totally silent to the outside, while people walk past it every day buying groceries or looking at their phones.
That's the magic of the street. But the culture on Filiki Etaireia isn't just hidden inside the lodge. It actually spills out onto the street. In fact, part of the Masonic building has a very public face.
We are talking about the cinema.
Scene Makedonicon, located just a few doors down at number 44 near the corner of Alexander Sfolu Street.
It's physically part of the same building block, right?
Yes, the cinema actually rents its space from the Masonic Cooperative. It's been operating there since 1951. And this isn't your standard multiplex showing the latest superhero blockbusters with a bucket of popcorn.
No, this is an absolute institution.
It's a historic art house cinema. It is the undeniable hub for cinephiles in Thessaloniki. It hosts independent film festivals, alternative documentaries, avant-garde cinema. It's where you go to see European films, the kind of art that really challenges you.
It fits the theme of the street perfectly, don't you think? The street seems to naturally attract people who are looking for something deeper beneath the surface, whether it's revolutionary politics in the 1800s, spiritual meaning in the lodges, or complex, challenging art on screen.
Absolutely. It draws a certain kind of energy. And just down the road at number 40, we have another landmark that adds to that energy, the Ioannis School.
A beautiful neoclassical building.
Built in 1907, it was originally constructed as the first public 6th grade primary school, specifically for boys of the Christian community.
And what's it used for today?
The lovely thing is it still operates as the 40th primary school today.
Over a century later.
Yeah. If you walk by during recess, you can hear the kids yelling and playing in the yard. It adds this wonderful layer of pure, vibrant life and future to all this heavy ancient history.
That's a great contrast. So we've walked past the Byzantine military walls, the Roman chariot track, the asylum turned church, the bulletproof Masonic Lodge, the art house cinema, and the school. What's the general vibe of the street today? Like if I'm walking there right now on a Tuesday afternoon, what does it feel like?
It's a really eclectic mix. Architecturally, you have these stunning, well-preserved Art Deco apartment buildings, especially right on the corner of Sfolu and Delu. But then at street level, the culture is very classically Thessaloniki.
Meaning what exactly?
You have these relaxed alternative cafes, Small maze places where locals are sitting outside, drinking Sapporo and arguing about politics for hours.
My notes also mention a heavy metal record store.
Yes, there's a dedicated heavy metal record store right there. And small workshops where artisans repair traditional musical instruments. It has a slightly bohemian, slightly gritty, artistic edge to it.
So it's not trying to be fancy.
Not at all. It's not the polished high street fashion of Samiski. It's much more authentic, much more lived in.
And then we get to the visual finale of the walk. You walk to the very end of the street, you look up, and what do you see?
The street visually ends with a perfect, unobstructed framing of the White Tower in the distance.
The ultimate symbol of the city.
Exactly. It anchors you geographically. You realize you are just steps away from the waterfront, from the sea.
So let's recap this incredible journey. In just a few hundred meters, maybe a 10-minute walk, if you don't stop to take photos, we have covered an insane amount of ground historically.
Let's list it out. We walked over a buried Roman racetrack where emperors sat in judgment. We touched Byzantine walls that defended an empire for centuries. We stood outside a church that was once an asylum echoing with screams. We looked up at a Masonic temple that survived the Nazis and secretly fed the hungry. And we ended our walk at a hub for modern art house cinema.
And hanging over all of it, the umbrella for this entire street is the spirit of the Filiki Etaireia, those 3 humble merchants in Odessa.
That's the invisible thread that ties it all together. The street is named after the friends. And in a way, the physical street is a testament to the resilience that those men sparked. Thessaloniki has been burned to the ground, occupied, besieged, bombed, and rebuilt. But it's still here.
The layers just keep building up, one on top of the other.
Exactly.
It really changes how you look at a city. It makes you realize that history isn't just something filed away in museums or textbooks. It's physically under your feet. It's baked into the concrete walls of the bank. It's in the name of the street sign that you ignore every single day on your commute.
That's spot on. We so often treat streets as just corridors, just a paved way to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. But a street like Filikis Eterias is the destination itself. It's a living, breathing museum.
So here is the mission for you listening right now. Next time you are walking down a quiet street, whether it's in Thessaloniki or London or New York, or literally anywhere, stop. Take your headphones out for a second. Look at the iron railings. Look at the stone foundations of the buildings. Look at the street name on the corner. Google it.
Ask yourself, what happened exactly where I'm standing? What is buried a few feet below me? Who walked here before me?
Because chances are you are walking past a secret.
And as we learned today, sometimes the biggest secrets are hiding right in plain sight.
But, it makes you think about one final thing. We've talked so much about the physical palimpsest, the stones, the concrete, the dirt.
Right.
But what about the digital layers we are leaving right now?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Right. Because in 200 years, historians might not be doing a deep dive on the concrete of Filikis Etaireias. They might be digging through the invisible digital footprint we're leaving on that exact same street today. The Wi-Fi networks, the geotagged photos, the text messages sent from that cafe. We are the new ghosts layering over the Romans and the Masons.
We are writing the next layer of the parchment right now without even realizing it.
Exactly. Freedom or death. It's a heavy motto, but it built a nation. And it gave us one incredible street to explore.
It certainly did.
That's all for today's deep dive into the Street of Secrets. Thanks for walking with us.
Thank you.
See you next time.